Well, we love NBA fantasy, which is why we have spent hours, talking about fantasy over the last few weeks so far, and I think we're going to continue to talk about it for the next 9 months or so now, nearly. And I guess we've played it for a few years. I don't know about you, man, but I've played for I don't know. I'm going to say tentatively 8 to 10 years now, on and off. I know some seasons I haven't played. No one wants to play me for some reason or whatnot. Can't get enough mates together. I played random leagues in the past sometimes just to do that. How about you, man? I don't know how long you've played, but
That was my sophomore season that I came off. So I did pretty well in my second season to make the championship. This is the first time playing in a big league of 10 players. Normally it's been 6 to 8.
oh, really? Okay, this is the
Um,
biggest league, is it? Wow.
yeah, so this
Oh,
is the biggest league, and that's probably what's making it more exciting for me is that you have to be a little bit more strategic with what you're doing, and there's less clear favorites, right? I think when we did our 6-man league last time, there were certain teams and you looked at it and you're like, wow, like that's really dominant because you've got 4 to 5 All Stars or 5, 6 NBA All NBA players. So
You definitely
I
have
guess that's
deeper
where we come
teams.
in.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's where we come in. We're trying to give our input on, let's pretend that you're in a league that you can only get 1 to 2 All NBA players.
Mm,
Who are you taking?
mm.
And positions are very important. We had a chat off camera, but I'm going to mention it here. Um, People who can only play one position, they have to be very good at that position because there is a little bit of, some people can play two roles. And if they can play two roles, how does that impact on things? Or where do you take them? Because maybe they're not the best point guard, but they're the fourth best point guard, but they're the second best shooting guard. So there's factors that'll come into that. But you're going
Absolutely.
to lead us in with
Hey,
your
so
top
we're
three
going to make some
awards.
recommendations online now that our fantasy draft is completed. I'm playing two leagues this year. I don't know about you, man. I'm playing our 10-player league at
Understood.
ESPN, and I've got another league of just people that I've just met, ballers as well. So I think it's going to be a competitive league of 14. So that was definitely a much deeper league as well, in that sort of sense. But hey, here's some recommendations we've got here. Starting at point guard, of players that I think that we should, or any fantasy owner should really target. And I'm going to start with a crazy name here. You may not necessarily agree with me, but I'm going to say Trae Young. Yeah, Trae Young is my first suggested point guard that you should focus on. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this kid, now that DeJounte Murray is gone, it's his team again. That's the most easy way to look at it. And I think he's going to have a real potential for a breakout season. At the very least, comes out of the gates really, really hot. Atlanta trying to be in the competitive mode and be in the playoff picture in that sort of sense. And Trae Young is going to be the front runner of the whole Hawk sort of game plan. And I think Trae Young should be a player that you definitely focus on trying to grab at the right price or in the right round. Um, and I think he's going to have a great season, especially early on. And then when you have a hot starter, then you can definitely try and swing for some other pieces, and that's always a good plan. My second player here is Emmanuel Quickly from the Toronto Raptors. I don't know about you, man. I don't know if you've ever had him, but I've had him in different seasons. I really like what he does, and now he's obviously a starter at the Raptors. He's projected to be a starter. At the Knicks, he was probably a sort of a six-man sort of role. Came off the bench. His numbers from a fantasy perspective were a little bit suppressed, but he's always had that potential to go 20 and 10, 20 and 8 from a points assist perspective. He's always sort of been able to can threes and little things like that you expect from a guard. If he could lift his percentages a little bit, that would be really, really nice. But I guess as a sort of a late pick, as a from a point guard position, I think Emmanuel quickly is a great kid to focus on. My last one here for the point guard position, man, is you're going to dispute this, every day. Is I'm going to say Ben Simmons. Yeah, man, I know we've already talked about Ben Simmons. Okay, I like this pick. I seriously like this pick. I would have paid $1 for him. I did not want to pay 8 for him. I might have paid $4 for him, okay, but I didn't want to pay $8 for him. But I think this year you will find Ben Simmons for $1 or for a pick in the 12th or 13th round, depending how deep your league is, obviously in that sort of sense. All right, it's worth a flyer. Okay, I think he does things across the board from
Okay.
a point guard position, including rebounds, including steals and blocks. And sure, he's not great at free throws. He does turn over the ball a little bit. Doesn't score a lot of points. I think it's still worth a flyer. He would be my third suggestion that you look at as a point guard in the later rounds, of course.
Obviously, the first point guard that I would target is SGA. So you've picked him up in your fantasy team, and the reason for it is he gives you 35 and 6, along with 2 steals and a block. So he hits the target for me of the stocks. He gives you a minimum of 2 stocks, but he does it on really good percentages, and he does it on lowish turnovers for what his usage is. he also is now playing with a better center, so the front court situation is different for them, and he's playing with good defensive guards to take some pressure off him from that end. The reason why I like SGA is you look at his box score, and it's always about the same. That he became that 31 point stroke, but that's good. Sometimes I think we get really caught up in averages and we say, oh, they averaged 35 points this season. Yeah. And for some stretches, you had to endure them scoring 15 to 18 points, and other stretches, they had 40 points. We always get excited about high points, but sometimes steady is good. And I think SGA is the most steady point guard in the league. Yes, Luka has slightly better stats across the board, but higher turnovers, weird percentages, and a little bit choppier. And that's why SGA for me is number one. Then I pretend that I'm drafting and say round 5 for a point guard. And this is where it becomes hard because I don't know what I'm drafting for. But I would say, depending on how early he goes on your draft, this is where James Harden can have some value, right? So James Harden is going to give you, at least last season, gave you 16 and 8, along with a surprising 1.1 steals and 0.8 blocks. But he also gives you 5 rebounds. The reason why I'm saying he's a bit of a sleeper here is the Clippers are different. The Clippers are not probably going to be in contention anymore for play-in. Like I think they're going to have a real significant slide, but he is going to play 34 to 35 minutes. They're in a new building, and he can do it. I could see his points going up to 20. I wouldn't be shocked because Paul George isn't there and Kawhi's out for half the season. I could see his assists staying around that rate. He's going to give you some threes. He might have high turnovers, but I think you're going to be able to almost get a 20 and 10 guy in that round because he's not going to be the most important point guard when you think of players like SGA, Luka, Jar, Steph. I think that's good value. And then I'm going to pretend that it's the end of the barrel. You've got nothing to pick. I'm actually going with the guy that I drafted, Chris Paul. And the reason why I'm going for Chris Paul here, last season it gave you 9 points, 7 assists, but also gives you that steal. Yes, I know he's old, and I know that he can pull his hamstring at any time, but he's also about to play with Wembanyama, and you're probably about to see some of the most ridiculous lobs that we've ever seen in our lives. And even if he only gives you that for 40 games, it's still going to be a high assists and high steals player at that value. So that would be my
Hey, I
round
don't,
5
I,
pick.
I don't, I don't dislike your list, man. I think all valid points. CP3, I think. I don't know. You drafted CP3, right? So you high on him this year. I
I'm banking on
hope
it.
I hope we see some highlight plays with him, Wemby. Absolutely. It wouldn't be shock horror if CP3 has a final year Steve Nash season. Yeah,
Yep.
just
Yeah,
doesn't
he can
really
break
get
his
on the
leg in the second game. Yep.
doesn't really get on the court because little niggly injuries here and there just and that sort of talent just never eventuates for the Spurs from an on-floor perspective. Look, Harden, yeah, absolutely. I think he's now a focal piece in the Clippers. They've lost 2 other players, that are all NBA caliber, and he's alpha number one just by default, really, in that sense. So, yeah. So
And
look,
he's
man,
excited. Did you see the quote? He's excited. He's excited to see that Luka's style of play does work to get you to the finals.
his
I'd be excited.
So look, man, I don't mind your picks there. I guess at the end of the day, you probably gone for some names that are pretty well known. That I think I've seen Harden go in round 1, round 2. That's crazy. I think. Yeah, I would not
Yeah,
suggest
I agree.
Harden in
No,
round 1 or round
absolutely fine.
2. But you were saying round 5, maybe that's probably a good pick. Maybe even round 4. That 18 and 10, 20 and 10 potential is there. Long as you can accept the other, he doesn't shoot that well, he might turn the ball over a fair bit, like you mentioned.